Night. Cold Pacific waters off Santa Catalina Island. A famous face vanishes into the dark. On the morning of November 29, 1981, the body of Natalie Wood, America's fragile rose, child star turned Hollywood icon, was found floating near the yacht Splendor. Hours earlier, she'd been on deck with her husband, Robert Wagner. Also aboard, a rising leading man, Christopher Walken, and the yacht's captain. 3 witnesses, 1 woman missing, and a swirl of stories that never quite aligned. Hollywood rushed to call it tragedy. The coroner called it an accident. But whispers rippled through studio lots and Malibu dining rooms. There were raised voices that night. There was jealousy. There was fear. A small dinghy was discovered away from the yacht. Bruises were noted. A woman known to fear deep water somehow ended up in it. Decades later, the case would shift under our feet. Files reopened, testimonies revised, accident softened into something far more uncertain. And in that uncertainty, a new narrative bloomed of power, image, and what an industry will do to protect its own. Was Natalie Wood running from an argument or reaching for a line that wasn't there? Did a misstep in the dark become a mystery that Hollywood couldn't afford to illuminate? Or was this the cleanest story money could buy? This is not a tale about a single night. It's about the machinery of fame and the shadows it casts. Behind the lights, behind the applause, behind the perfect photographs lies the oldest question in this town. When the truth is inconvenient, who decides what becomes official? And who in the end pays for that decision?
Natalie Wood was born Natalia Nikolaevna Zakharenko on July 20, 1938 in San Francisco, California, to Russian immigrant parents. Her father, a restless man with a volatile temper, worked menial jobs. Her mother, Maria, was consumed by dreams of turning her daughter into a star. Maria carried with her a sense of mysticism, even consulting fortune tellers who warned that her child would die in dark water. That chilling prophecy would haunt Natalie all her life. From her earliest years, Natalie was trained to be camera-ready. At just 4 years old, she landed her first small role in a film. By the time she was 8, she had starred in Miracle on 34th Street, cementing her as one of Hollywood's most beloved child stars. Yet behind the twinkling smile, her childhood was marked not by play, but by pressure. On set, directors demanded tears, and when they didn't come naturally, her mother would whisper threats or tug her hair until she cried on cue. Natalie's early life was a paradox, glittering premieres and crushing control. She lived under the constant gaze of her mother, who insisted that stardom was the family's only salvation. While other children attended school and played in parks, Natalie memorized scripts and perfected expressions in front of mirrors. Her father's unpredictable moods and her mother's relentless ambition left her feeling both adored and exploited. One detail from her youth would become eerily symbolic. Natalie had a lifelong fear of drowning. Family members recalled how she would recoil from deep water, clinging to the edges of pools, certain that she would never be safe in it. That dread, seeded by a childhood prophecy, grew into a private terror that followed her into adulthood. By the time she entered her teenage years, Natalie had already appeared in over a dozen films. To the public, she was radiant, precocious, destined for greatness. To herself, she was a child carrying adult burdens, navigating a world that demanded perfection while offering little innocence in return. Her background set the stage for everything that followed: the craving for love, the fragility beneath her polished image, and the haunting fear that water, the element she most dreaded, might someday claim her.
By the mid-1950s, Natalie Wood was no longer the precocious child audiences adored in Miracle on 34th Street. She was a teenager on the edge of transformation, trying to prove she could survive Hollywood's most treacherous phase, the transition from child star to leading lady. Many young actors faded once they outgrew their youthful charm, but Natalie was determined to fight for a place in the spotlight. At just 16, she landed the role that would forever alter her trajectory. Judy in Rebel Without a Cause, 1955. Starring alongside James Dean and Sal Mineo, Natalie embodied the restless, yearning spirit of post-war American youth. The film was not only a cultural earthquake, it was also a personal breakthrough. Her performance won her an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress, making her one of the youngest nominees in Oscar history at the time. Suddenly, Natalie Wood was no longer just a child actress, she was a serious talent. That success didn't come easily. In her early career, Natalie struggled to convince directors that she was more than a pretty face. Hollywood was saturated with young women trying to escape typecasting, but Natalie possessed a rare combination of vulnerability and intensity. Directors noticed how her eyes could convey longing, sadness, or defiance with barely a word. This emotional depth helped her land roles that resonated with audiences. Still, behind the glamour, the cost of ambition weighed heavily. As a teenager working long hours on demanding sets, she often felt isolated. The pressure to remain flawless was immense, and she sometimes admitted in interviews that she was terrified of being discarded by the very industry that had raised her. This anxiety fueled her work ethic. Natalie threw herself into her roles, determined to prove she belonged. In 1961, she delivered another landmark performance in Splendor in the Grass, directed by Elia Kazan. As Deanie Loomis, a young woman trapped between passion and repression, Natalie gave one of the rawest, most vulnerable performances of her career. The role earned her another Academy Award nomination and confirmed her place among Hollywood's elite. That same year, she starred in West Side Story, one of the most iconic musicals ever produced. Though her singing was dubbed, her portrayal of Maria brought warmth and poignancy to the film, which went on to win 10 Oscars. By her early 20s, Natalie had crossed the threshold from ingenue to superstar. She was now one of the few actresses of her generation who had successfully navigated the treacherous leap from child stardom to adult acclaim. Hollywood saw her as radiant, bankable, and versatile. Audiences saw her as relatable yet untouchable, an image of beauty tinged with melancholy. But even in this period of triumph, cracks were visible. Natalie often chose roles that mirrored her own emotional struggles, as if art was the only place she could safely confront her fragility. This pattern would follow her throughout her career, foreshadowing the complicated personal life and haunting tragedy that lay ahead. By the early 1960s, Natalie Wood had become more than a successful actress. She was a symbol. To Hollywood, she embodied the perfect blend of glamour and vulnerability, and to audiences around the world, she was the reflection of their own struggles, captured in Technicolor. After Rebel Without a Cause and Splendor in the Grass, Natalie had secured her place among Hollywood's most respected young talents. But what followed was a decade that would elevate her into the stratosphere of stardom. Her role in West Side Story 1961 was pivotal. Though her singing voice was dubbed by Marni Nixon, Natalie's performance as Maria gave the musical its emotional center. The film became a global phenomenon, grossing more than $40 million in the United States alone, an astronomical figure for its time, and sweeping the Academy Awards with 10 Oscars, including Best Picture. Natalie's radiant screen presence, combined with her heartbreaking innocence, transformed Maria from a character into an icon. Millions of viewers wept with her, and for the first time, Natalie was not just an actress, she was a star whose face defined an era. Hot off that success, she continued to take on roles that challenged her versatility. In Gypsy, 1962, she played Gypsy Rose Lee,
transitioning from a shy girl into a confident burlesque queen. Critics marveled at the way Natalie managed to carry the character through such a radical transformation with conviction. Later that same year, she starred in Love with the Proper Stranger, opposite Steve McQueen, a performance that earned her another Academic Award nomination. Natalie was now in rare company, a 3-time Oscar nominee before the age of 25. Her ascent wasn't just about box office numbers or awards, it was about cultural resonance. Natalie Wood's characters embodied the inner conflicts of young women in mid-century America, torn between passion and propriety, tradition and independence. In an age when Hollywood often reduced women to archetypes, Natalie infused her roles with nuance. She became a voice for the unspoken desires and frustrations of a generation. By the mid-1960s, Natalie Wood was among the highest-paid actresses in the industry, commanding salaries that rivaled her male counterparts. Studio executives trusted her name to draw audiences, and magazine covers proclaimed her America's sweetheart. Yet she was no mere confection. Natalie's off-screen image, elegant yet approachable, sophisticated yet fragile, fascinated the public. Every dress she wore, every man she was seen with, became a headline. It was during this period of brilliance that her personal life also became entwined with her public myth. Her marriage to Robert Wagner in 1957 had been a dream come true for gossip columnists. He was handsome, charming, and already a rising star himself. Together, they were Hollywood's golden couple, the kind of union that fan magazines compared to fairy tales. Their photographs graced covers, their parties filled with other luminaries. To the outside world, it seemed Natalie had everything: a thriving career, critical acclaim, and the perfect husband. But Natalie's glory was not without cost. Even at the height of her fame, she wrestled with insecurities. She often worried she wasn't talented enough, that her beauty was fleeting, that she was only as good as her last performance. Friends recalled how she would obsessively read reviews, dissecting every word of praise or criticism. In the fiercely competitive landscape of Hollywood, Natalie felt the need to prove herself again and again. Despite these doubts, the 1960s remained her era of triumph. Films like Inside Daisy Clover and This Property is Condemned cemented her reputation as a serious dramatic actress. Though not all were commercial hits, they demonstrated her willingness to push artistic boundaries. She was no longer the ingenue trying to find her place. She was an established star, choosing her projects with intention. Her accolades extended beyond cinema. Natalie became a fixture in the fashion world, admired for her chic style and poise. Photographs of her in elegant gowns or casual California attire filled glossy spreads in Vogue and Harper's Bazaar. She was the epitome of modern femininity, graceful, glamorous, but with an undercurrent of fragility that made her endlessly intriguing. By the dawn of the 1970s, Natalie Wood was a legend in her own right. She had earned the rare status of being both critically respected and universally adored. Few stars of her generation could match her combination of box office draw, artistic recognition, and cultural influence. She was not simply acting in films, she was shaping the narrative of American womanhood on screen. And yet, at the very summit of her glory, shadows began to form. The studio system that had once nurtured stars like Natalie was weakening. Younger, edgier actresses were emerging, reshaping Hollywood's landscape. Though Natalie remained admired, the industry was changing, and she could sense it. Her career, like her marriage to Wagner, would soon encounter turbulence. For now, though, in the bright lights of the 1960s, Natalie Wood stood as one of Hollywood's brightest constellations. Her name meant prestige, her face meant glamour, and her life seemed like the embodiment of everything the Dream Factory promised. But behind that shining image were cracks, small, hidden fractures that would widen in the years to come, setting the stage for conflict, scandal, and tragedy.
The brilliance of Natalie Wood's career masked a personal life entangled with shadows. While audiences adored her luminous presence on screen, her off-screen world was marked by turbulence, failed relationships, emotional struggles, and ultimately, a fateful entanglement that would lead to her demise. Her marriage to Robert Wagner, once celebrated as Hollywood's fairy tale romance, was never as perfect as the glossy magazine spread suggested. Married in 1957 when Natalie was just 19, the couple quickly became tabloid darlings. But behind the smiles, their union was riddled with tension. Wagner was deeply insecure about Natalie's rising stardom. Friends recalled heated arguments, fueled by his jealousy and her desire for independence. In 1962, barely 5 years after they wed, the marriage collapsed. They divorced, citing irreconcilable differences, and Hollywood buzzed with speculation of betrayal and mistrust. Natalie tried to rebuild. She explored relationships with high-profile men, including Warren Beatty, Frank Sinatra, and producer Richard Gregson, whom she eventually married in 1969. With Gregson, she had her first child, Natasha. For a time, it seemed she had found balance, but the stability was short-lived. Gregson was unfaithful, and the marriage ended in 1972. By then, Wagner had re-entered her life. Against all odds, Natalie remarried him that same year. To outsiders, it looked like destiny, the rekindling of a great love story. Yet those close to them whispered that the relationship remained volatile. Arguments resurfaced, fueled by Wagner's controlling nature and Natalie's insecurities. There was passion, but also deep fractures that never fully healed. Her professional life, too, entered a phase of conflict. Hollywood in the 1970s shifted toward edgier, more radical cinema, leaving behind the kind of prestige dramas Natalie had once excelled in. Younger actresses like Jane Fonda and Faye Dunaway captured the zeitgeist. Natalie, still beautiful and talented, found fewer roles that suited her. She took a hiatus from acting to focus on motherhood, but returning to the screen proved more difficult than expected. By 1981, Natalie had accepted a role in Brainstorm alongside Christopher Walken, an actor nearly a decade her junior whose career was on the rise. The pairing drew attention, not only for the on-screen chemistry, but for the off-screen rumors that followed. Hollywood insiders speculated about a possible attraction between Wood and Walken. Whether true or not, the gossip inflamed Wagner's jealousy. The tension came to a head over Thanksgiving weekend in November 1981. Natalie, Wagner, Walken, and yacht captain Dennis Davern set sail on Wagner's yacht Splendor near Catalina Island. Accounts of that night diverged wildly, but one detail is consistent. Voices were raised. Walken later admitted to heated discussions about Natalie's career, her desire to work, and Wagner's opposition. Davern, the captain, would claim years later that Wagner and Natalie argued violently, with Wagner consumed by rage. In the early hours of November 29th, Natalie vanished. She was later found floating face down in the water, wearing only a nightgown, socks, and a jacket. The dinghy tied to the yacht was discovered adrift, suggesting she may have tried to escape or secure it. Her body bore bruises and an abrasion on her cheek. The official report concluded that she had slipped while trying to board the dinghy, calling it an accident, but doubts lingered. The inconsistencies were glaring. Natalie had a well-documented fear of deep water. Friends insisted she would never have gone alone into the dinghy at night. Wagner's behavior was also troubling. He refused to answer certain questions fully, and his statements conflicted with Davern's. Walken distanced himself, claiming he had been asleep during the crucial moments. As the years passed, suspicions grew. In 2011, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department reopened the case, citing new witness statements.
The cause of death was changed from accidental drowning to drowning and other undetermined factors. In 2018, Robert Wagner was officially named a person of interest, though no charges were ever filed. Hollywood, long adept at hiding scandals, closed ranks around the tragedy. For decades, the industry whispered about what really happened on the Splendor. Was it a drunken accident? A desperate escape from a marital fight? Or something darker? An act of violence cloaked by influence and silence? Her story, particularly the events leading to that November night, remains one of Hollywood's most enduring enigmas, an open wound where truth has been drowned by power, image, and silence.
The morning of November 29, 1981, shattered the illusion of Hollywood glamour with a single image: Natalie Wood's lifeless body pulled from the Pacific Ocean. She was just 43 years old, her career poised for a resurgence, her life outwardly complete with fame, family, and fortune. Yet in those dark waters near Catalina Island, the dream collapsed. The official narrative that followed was swift and almost too tidy. Authorities declared it a tragic accident. Natalie, reportedly intoxicated, had slipped into the water while trying to secure the dinghy tied to the yacht. But those who knew her best recoiled at the explanation. Natalie's fear of water was legendary. She had confided to friends and family that she never learned to swim and that she dreaded the idea of drowning. The notion that she would voluntarily step into a dinghy, alone, on a cold night seemed implausible. Her death sent shockwaves through Hollywood. Newspapers splashed her photograph across front pages, calling it a mystery at sea. Fans gathered outside her home, clutching flowers and demanding answers. Inside the industry, whispers grew louder. Why had Wagner waited hours before notifying the Coast Guard that Natalie was missing? Why did Walken retreat into silence, refusing interviews? And why did the yacht's captain later confess that he had been pressured not to tell investigators everything he knew? The more details emerged, the more unsettling the tragedy became. The bruises on her arms and legs suggested she had struggled. Her sister, Lana Wood, publicly demanded that the case be reopened, convinced that Wagner knew more than he admitted. But in 1981, the climate of Hollywood power was different. Studios and publicists worked tirelessly to shield their stars, and difficult questions were left unanswered. The final coroner's report listed the cause of death as accidental drowning, closing the case, but not the wounds. In the years that followed, Natalie's absence loomed over those who had loved her. Wagner, left with their young daughter Courtney, retreated from the spotlight, though his career endured. Walken continued his rise in Hollywood, but his association with that night remained a permanent shadow. For fans, the loss was unbearable. Natalie had not been a fading star, but one poised for new heights. Brainstorm, the film she had been working on with Walken, was eventually completed and released in 1983. Watching her on screen, audiences couldn't escape the haunting knowledge that she was already gone. Natalie Wood's fall was not gradual, like so many of her peers who succumbed to drugs or fading fame. It was sudden, violent, and inexplicable. A tragic full stop to a life that had been defined by contradictions. She had survived the child star curse, navigated the pressures of stardom, and endured tumultuous relationships. But in the end, her greatest fear claimed her. The tragedy of Natalie Wood's death lies not only in the loss of her talent, but in the questions it left behind. Questions that, more than 40 years later, still hover over Hollywood like a ghost that refuses to rest. Natalie Wood's story did not end in the waters of Catalina. Her death became the beginning of a haunting legacy, one that continues to grip Hollywood with unanswered questions. In 2011, 3 decades after her passing, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department reopened the case, citing new witness statements. The cause of death was revised from accidental drowning to drowning and other undetermined factors. In 2018, Robert Wagner was officially named a person of interest, though he has never been charged. The silence surrounding that night remains deafening, an echo of Hollywood's ability to bury its darkest secrets. For fans, Natalie is frozen in time, luminous on screen, tragic in memory. Her performances in Rebel Without a Cause, Splendor in the Grass, and West Side Story endure as cultural landmarks. Generations of young women have seen in her a reflection of their own struggles, the tension between vulnerability and strength, independence and longing. Her artistry lives on, preserved in film reels that continue to draw new audiences. But her legacy is more than cinematic. Natalie's mysterious death has become a cautionary tale about the intersection of fame, power, and truth. It reminds us that even the brightest stars can be consumed by shadows. Behind the perfection of publicity stills and red carpet smiles was a woman caught between love and fear, career and control, freedom and confinement. Today, Natalie Wood is remembered not only as one of Hollywood's most talented actresses, but also as one of its enduring enigmas. Her life was a dazzling performance, her death an unsolved riddle. And together, they form a story that ensures Natalie will never be forgotten, celebrated for her artistry, mourned for her fate, and immortalized as a mystery that refuses to fade.
Natalie Wood's life was brilliance wrapped in tragedy. A child star who became a Hollywood legend, only to vanish in a way that still defies explanation. More than 40 years later, her death remains one of the most enduring mysteries in entertainment history. Accident, murder, or cover-up, the truth may never surface. But what lingers is the haunting image of a woman who gave everything to the screen and who paid the ultimate price in silence. What do you believe happened that night on the Splendor? Was Natalie Wood the victim of a cruel accident, or is the real story still hidden in Hollywood shadows? If this story left you searching for answers, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Beyond the Red Carpet, and join us as we uncover the untold truths behind Hollywood's brightest and darkest legends.